Hi everyone, my name is Ibreez Ajaz. I work as a doctor in the NHS, and welcome to our InFocus series, where we try to condense information into small snippet videos so that you can get exactly what you need to know in a short amount of time. Today we're going to be speaking about the IELTS, or the International English Language Testing System. You will need to clear the IELTS or the OET in order to complete your PLAB journey and get to working in the UK. But OET is going to be another video, so let's just focus on the IELTS today. The marks that you need to attain for IELTS is 7.0 in all the modules and 7.5 overall. So what are the modules? There is listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Okay? Now, most of us seem to have trouble with the speaking portion and the writing portion. The writing portion especially, if I'm not mistaken. And the reason for that is, in today's day and age, we don't really practice our writing as much as we would like to. Same thing goes for speaking. Most of us do not use English as our primary language, so why would we ever really have practice with it? When it comes to reading and listening, however, we tend to do pretty well because most of our medical textbooks tend to be in English. And of course, there are so many movies that we will watch, or TV shows that we will watch, so we do pretty well when it comes to listening. So I want to first give you all some tips related to writing. So what can you first expect when it comes to the writing portion? Well, there are going to be two tasks, task 1 and task 2. Task 2 is a little bit longer than task 1 is, and I would insist on you all at least attempting to do task 2 first, because you want to spend as much time as possible on it to make sure it's perfect. Both tasks have a minimum word requirement, which I would also suggest you count out your words to make sure you're meeting that requirement, because you don't want it to be that you've written your best and it's just falling short of the minimum requirements. Now, what many of us start to wonder about is how can we ideally prepare? If you feel you're very confident in your writing, you don't need to do much more than any of the series that we've mentioned in our blog link in the description box below, or any more than perhaps local coaching, or perhaps just having someone tutor you or review your writing with you. But if you feel that you really need to buckle down and study, I would suggest just finding anything near you, be it by way of coaching or perhaps a book you want to read, and just sticking to that one pattern of writing. There are different formulas and different approaches, and everyone will tell you, well, this is my way, well, that is my way. Whichever way you feel the most comfortable with, just stick to that way. Do not try and pick and choose, because different patterns of writing and different approaches will only muddle your attempt. You don't want to try and think of different ways of doing things when you can just find one way and stick to it. So let me talk a little bit about the tasks with you. Essentially, like I said, you should start trying to do task 2 first, and a lot of times what you'll find are there'll be comparison tasks, why one thing may be better than another, or perhaps how you'll have to compare two things. What I like to do, how I did the approach in the exam was, at my exam center they gave us a pen and a pencil, and also we had an extra sheet where we could write out our thoughts. So what I first did was I did a rough draft, and I brainstormed a little on that sheet with pencil. And then I took those ideas, compiled them, and wrote it on my main task sheet in pen. You can do this if this works for you, but again, you have to keep your eye on the clock because you don't want to waste too much time doing this. Same thing goes for task 1. Task 1, you need not give any sort of personal experiences. It's asking you to take the data that they give you in the task itself and then present it in whatever way you feel that's your, whatever approach you want to go, whichever angle whatever side that you're taking. So try to avoid giving any personal experiences in that section, and again, you can use the extra sheet that they have there and use pencil to kind of figure out a preliminary draft and then go from there. The next thing I want to talk to you all about is the speaking portion. Now, speaking may be before your written exam, or it may be a couple of days after. It just comes down to your center, and they will inform you accordingly. A lot of us become extremely nervous during the speaking portion because we don't regularly practice our spoken English, which is fine. So definitely in the months before your exam, you should practice your spoken English as much as possible. A lot of us feel restrained in speaking our English because we feel perhaps our accent isn't perfect or that we're not confident. And the only way you're going to be able to gain confidence is if you practice. The most important tips I could definitely tell you are to enunciate and pronunciate as much as possible. Listen to how a word is pronounced by going to websites like dictionary.com. You can hear back the sounds if you're not sure about certain words. A lot of us have a very good vocabulary. It's just that we're not sure how words are supposed to be said. And that's what can, mess you up. A lot of the time, I remember when I was in school, I always thought that the word rendezvous was pronounced rendezvous because that's what it looks like. And a lot of us kind of falter there because we see the word, but we're not sure of how it sounds. So definitely make sure you take enough time to know how words sound before you actually say them, because then you'll also feel more confident. Okay guys, we're going to try and talk about how to improve your listening now. So, most of us tend to do pretty well on this section. If you aren't doing well in listening, it's because you're not paying attention, not that you aren't actively able to understand what a person is saying. And that can happen too because you're maybe paying more attention to the accent versus what the words are. So in order to improve that, I would definitely suggest going through any of the audio that is in any of the series you may have purchased, or of course watching TV shows, listening to songs, watching certain movies. But if you're going to watch TV shows or movies, try not to keep any subtitles because that'll just be your handicap. You'll start doing better on your reading than you will your listening because you're just going to be reading what they're saying instead of actually actively listening to what they're saying. And you need to keep in mind that even though you're taking the IELTS for your RoadToUK, they will use a lot of different accents. On my exam day, they had Australian accents, they had a Scottish accent, they had American accents. So don't think it'll just be your typified, BBC British English that you'll hear. There'll be a lot of different accents. So you want your ear to be able to be keen enough to pick up exactly what they're saying. Likewise, even if you can hear everything perfectly, if you're not sure what you're listening for, you might miss it. So I would definitely suggest reading through the questions very quickly right before they start the listening section so that you can at least kind of keep it in the back of your mind that I need to hear for these words or I need to hear for this part so that when it comes, you're prepared and you can quickly write it down. And lastly, let's talk about how to improve our reading. Most of us tend to be pretty confident when it comes to the reading section because for a majority of us, our medical textbooks are also in English. But where we lack is the comprehensive analysis of the reading section and the inference that they often want. So, in order to fix that, there's two things that you should keep in mind. First of all, they're going to give you pretty long passages, and that's not going to necessarily always be perfectly, elementary grade English. It can be on topics that you would never expect to even read about in your day-to-day life. So keep that in mind when you're reading. And also keep in mind that you should probably want to go through the questions first. Like you did with the listening, just keep a quick glance over to the questions that are there and then go back and read through the passage, marking whatever parts you think are relevant or important to the questions that you've already read. Now, do not read through the questions and then just try and do this kind of hunter and gatherer thing where you're like, oh, I see this question's asking me about the color yellow. Let me go find throughout this entire passage where they're talking about the color yellow. This will just be a waste of time. And if that question is about inferring something or about something completely different that you wouldn't grasp unless you read the entire passage, you are not going to be able to answer those questions properly. Again, you want to keep your eye on the clock because reading passages can be something that we might spend a lot of time on if we're not very fluid in reading. So don't be scared about that. You can practice this by, reading newspaper articles or reading about your favorite sports, whatever they're doing today in the news, how your cricket team or your football team's doing. It can be about any little book that you want to read or magazine you want to read. Just kind of practice your speed in reading. A lot of us can read just fine, of course, but it comes down to how quickly you can read and how quickly you can retain the relevant information. Okay, so let's talk now a little bit more about what you can expect on the exam day and how long the exam actually is. So the reading and writing sections are both an hour long, the listening section's 30 minutes long, and the speaking section tends to take about 10 to 15 minutes. So you can expect to at least spend 2 hours and 45 minutes on the exam itself. But that does not mean you just show up 3 hours before the exam starts because it's not going to work that way because you have to go through certain tests beforehand to make sure that you are the person you're saying you are before the exam. So what they'll do is they'll ask you to come at a certain time, bring that form that confirms your exam date, as well as your passport. You can see whether or not you need to bring anything else. My exam center provided all of the pens, pencils, erasers, and all of that stuff. So if they tell you you don't need to bring anything, don't worry about it. Definitely try not to bring anything valuable. All exam centers won't necessarily have places to keep your things. Another thing you'll need to keep in mind is they're going to do a biometric process beforehand. They'll take your fingerprints, they'll take your picture. They need to make sure that you are you, because even in the exam hall itself, there will be cameras in the front, there will be cameras in the back, there will be cameras on the side. They are really watching you, so be very careful, and of course do not cheat, because they will catch you. Even the slightest whisper will easily be picked up considering the amount of cameras they have around you. Now let's talk a little bit about the biometric process. Yes, they will take your fingerprints, and yes, they will take your photo, but if you wear a hijab, if you wear a scarf like this, they're going to ask you to loosen it a lot so that they can see your ears as well, and they'll have you take off glasses if you wear glasses. I'm not sure why they want to see your ears. I did ask, and the guy just told me he's just the guy that takes photos. He's not really sure why they want to see your ears. So keep that in mind. If you are going to be wearing a hijab, try not to have a billion pins in it or something that's very complicatedly put up that you're not going to be able to put back together. Definitely dress as comfortable as possible. It's already a pretty stressful exam, and you don't want to be wearing something that you don't want to be in for 3 or 4 hours. At the same time, you don't want to wear something that will make you feel too cold. You don't necessarily know how cold or how hot the exam center will be. Try and have a good breakfast before the exam. Try not to have too much caffeine. You are allowed bathroom breaks, but there are certain times where they won't let you go, like the listening section, because they're not going to play it again. And of course not during the speaking section, because you're going to be speaking. I hope you're not going to keep running in and out. I know that can happen to us sometimes if we're nervous, but try and not do that. For the writing and the reading, they will let you go, but your time will continue in the background. You don't want to spend a lot of time in the bathroom and waste that time that you could be putting into making sure that you get the marks that you need. So another thing you should all keep in mind is sometimes what will happen is you're not really sure about one part of the exam. Like for the writing section, maybe you're not sure which part you really need to write on. There are invigilators in the exam hall, and they will answer your questions. Let me clarify. They won't answer the questions for you in the exam itself, but if you have any questions related to the exam, for instance, can I write on this portion? Do I have to bubble this, or can I just circle this? Can I use pen here? Those types of things, they will answer those questions. Don't be scared of the invigilators, even though I'm sure they'll be terrifying you because they're going to be standing around you for most of the exam. And if you're like me, I cannot concentrate if somebody is standing over my shoulder, but unfortunately you have to do that for this exam. Another thing, if you are appearing in your speaking exam on a day that's different than the day you are appearing for the written exam, try and dress at least semi-professionally, perhaps like if you're going for an interview or something like that. Don't come in t-shirts and jeans, because I know you're going to be like, well, why does it matter? It's just they're judging you on your speaking. But there is an impression that you are making, and you want to be able to put your best foot forward, especially because this is literally the first step on your journey to get to the UK. And you don't want such a small thing to be what will be the thing that hampers you from doing that. You don't want that to be the obstacle in your path. So definitely keep those little things in the back of your mind. I'm not saying you have to come in a suit and tie. Be comfortable, but at the same time, be professional. All right, guys, I hope I gave a really nicely condensed explanation of what you can expect for the IELTS and some tips and advice on how you can do well. So, again, if you all have the IELTS upcoming, best of luck. Do not worry about this exam. I know all we ever see sometimes in the forums is that, oh, I couldn't attain the marks I wanted in IELTS. I couldn't get the points I wanted for IELTS. But keep in mind, most of the time, people will publish their failures more than their successes. So don't think that everyone is failing the IELTS. Don't think that you can't pass the IELTS. If you put that in your mind from the get-go, you'll never be able to succeed in anything. So keep in the back of your mind, you've got this. You can pass the IELTS, you'll get the marks that you need to get, and you'll be done with this exam, and you'll start preparing for PLAB 1. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this InFocus episode on the IELTS, and I hope it had all the information that you needed to know, and it'll be very useful for you for your exam. If you haven't already, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our channel. If you have any comments or queries, do not hesitate to comment below, or go ahead, you can message us even on Facebook, and we'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. So good luck, guys, and thank you again for watching.